Sister called me loser behind my back, so I stopped paying her rent, and she got kicked out. Now she's begging, and saying it won't happen again. But it's too late, I said bye. I still remember the moment I found out how it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. For years I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting my younger sister, Betty. She asked me for help when she started college, explaining that she had no one else to turn to. Mom and Dad had divorced when we were teenagers, and neither of them wanted much to do with us after we turned 18. "You're grown up now," they both said, almost in unison, as they moved on with their lives. Mom found a new husband. Dad moved in with someone younger. Meanwhile, Betty and I were left to figure things out on our own. I was working full-time by then, holding down a decent job, and I'd always felt protective of Betty. She was my little sister. She had big dreams, and it didn't seem fair that she had to give them up because of our parents' selfishness. So when she called me in tears, saying she couldn't afford her rent, I didn't hesitate to step in. At first it was just a few $100s to cover the gap, but it quickly turned into something more regular. Betty promised to pay me back someday, but I wasn't holding my breath. I didn't mind. I wanted her to succeed. I figured that was what family did for each other. Besides the rent, I'd occasionally send her extra money for groceries or books or just because she asked. Sometimes it was $300, sometimes $500. She'd say something like, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Finn." And it felt good to be needed. For years I thought we were close. I thought I was helping her out of a difficult situation. I even ignored the occasional red flags, the flashy clothes, the fancy dinners with her friends, the Instagram posts showing off trips I definitely didn't pay for. When I asked, she'd say her friends had treated her or that she'd saved up. I believed her because I wanted to. Then, one night, it all came tumbling down. Betty's friend Linda showed up at my door, looking like she was on a mission. I barely knew her beyond a few quick introductions when she'd gone with Betty to steal money from me. But that night, she wasn't there to hang out. "I thought you should know the truth about your sister," Linda said, straight to the point. I was confused, but curious enough to let her in. She didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. According to Linda, Betty had been laughing at me behind my back for years. She told her friends that I was a loser, who didn't have a girlfriend because I was too busy playing sugar daddy to my golden sister. Linda claimed that Betty even bragged about how she could guilt me into giving her money whenever she wanted just to keep up with her friends who relied on their parents for everything. At first I didn't believe it. It sounded too ridiculous, too cruel. But Linda was prepared for my disbelief. She showed me screenshots of group chats in which Betty had made these very comments. It hit me like a ton of bricks. This was the sister I'd bend over backwards to support. The one I'd sacrifice nights out and vacations for just so she wouldn't have to stress about bills. I felt sick. But Linda wasn't done yet. She had her own reason for spilling the tea. Betty had been sleeping with Linda's boyfriend behind her back. Linda wasn't just being nice to me. This was revenge. Still, the damage was done. I didn't sleep that night. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Betty hadn't just been ungrateful, she'd used me, mocked me, and thrown it all in my face. I decided then and there that I was done being her safety net. The next morning I had a plan. Not only was I going to cut her off, I was going to make sure she knew exactly why. The next day, I showed up at Betty's apartment with what I told her was a surprise gift. She let me in, sounding cheerful, as if nothing was wrong. If she had any idea what was coming, she didn't show it. I walked in and saw her lounging on the couch in her usual way, scrolling through her phone. The place looked way too nice for someone who supposedly couldn't pay the rent without my help. Designer throw pillows, a brand new coffee maker, and what looked like a stack of grocery bags in the corner. I bit my tongue and forced a smile. "Hey, Finn," she said. "What's the occasion?" "Oh, nothing," I replied. "Just wanted to talk." We sat down, and I started off casually, asking about her classes, her friends, and how her life was going. I let her ramble on for a while, pretending to listen, until she mentioned a new restaurant she and her friends had gone to the night before. Sounds expensive, I said, sitting back. She shrugged. Yeah, but it's worth it. You have to treat yourself sometimes, right? That was my opening. Speaking of treating yourself, I ran into Linda yesterday. The color drained from her face, but she quickly recovered. Oh, Linda? What did she do? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I'd brought with me, the screenshots Linda had sent me. I placed them on the coffee table. Would you like to explain this? She froze, staring at the screenshots like they were a bomb about to go off. At first she tried to deny it, laughing nervously and saying that Linda must have doctored them. But when I started reading the messages aloud word for word, she realized there was no way out. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice rising. You called me a loser? You told your friends I'm some pathetic brother with nothing better to do than finance your lifestyle? And you think it's funny to brag about how easy it is to take my money? She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, Betty didn't have a clever excuse or a guilt trip ready. You have nothing to say, huh? I continued. All these years I've been breaking my back to make sure you're okay, and this is how you repay me? By laughing at me behind my back? Then she started to cry. At first it was the kind of fake tears she used to manipulate me, but when she saw that I wasn't buying it, she went into full panic mode. Finn, I didn't mean any of it. It was just a stupid joke. You know how people talk in group chats, it's all nonsense. I didn't mean to hurt you. Save it, I snapped. I'm done, Betty. I'm done paying your rent, sending you money, and bailing you out. You can make it on your own now, just like Mom and Dad said. And don't bother calling me to beg. You're on your own. She fell to her knees, grabbed my arm and sobbed, promising to change, to make it right, to never talk about me like that again. But I wasn't having it. I don't need you to apologize, I said. I need you to grow up. Good luck with the rent next month. I thought leaving would feel satisfying, like I'd finally gotten my dignity back. But as I drove home, all I felt was anger at Betty for using me, at myself for being so blind, and even at Linda for opening my eyes to something I couldn't deny. For the next month I heard nothing from Betty, which surprised me. I expected the phone calls to start within days, her voice shaking as she begged me to reconsider. Instead, radio silence. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that I got my first clue as to what was going on. A mutual friend of ours, Jake, called me out of the blue. Jake and I weren't particularly close, but we hung out occasionally. I picked up the phone and after some awkward small talk he said, Hey man, I ran into Betty the other day. She asked if I could loan her some money. Something about rent being late. What's up with her? I hesitated, debating how much to tell him. Let's just say I'm not helping her out anymore. Jake laughed. Figured. She said something about you cutting her off. She looked rough, dude. Honestly, I don't think she's told her friends yet. She acted like it was temporary, but I don't know, man. She seemed desperate. Hearing this gave me mixed feelings. On the one hand, it felt like justice. On the other hand, it was hard to shake the years of conditioning. I still felt guilty, even though I knew I shouldn't. A week later I finally heard from Betty. She texted me, not to apologize, but to try a new angle. Betty. Hey Finn. I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to check in. Are you still upset? Let me know if we can talk soon. I ignored it. 2 days later she sent another message, this time more direct. Betty. So I'm late with the rent this month. They're giving me until the end of the week to pay or they'll start eviction proceedings. I really don't want to bother you, but I'm stuck. I could really use your help just this once. I swear it won't happen again. I almost laughed out loud. The audacity was unbelievable. But I didn't answer. That Friday I got a phone call from Linda. I hadn't expected to hear from her again, but her tone was different this time. Finn, there's something you need to know, she said. Betty's been telling people that you're going to come by and pay her rent at the last minute, like you always do. She's bragging about it, saying it's all part of her plan to get back in your good graces. She doesn't even think you mean it. I clenched my jaw. She what? I thought you should know, Linda went on. She's been going around saying that you'll forgive her because you always do, and that this is just you being dramatic. Honestly, I didn't want to get involved again, but it pissed me off. She doesn't deserve your help, Finn. Don't give her another cent. That was the last nail in the coffin. If Betty thought I was bluffing, she was in for the rude awakening of her life. The following week, the inevitable happened. Betty was officially evicted. She sent me a barrage of messages saying that she had nowhere to go, that she was moving in with Mom and her stepfather for the time being, and that she was humiliated. She called me, too, leaving voicemails full of sobs and apologies, vowing never to take advantage of me again. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. A few days after she moved in with Mom, I got another text from Betty. Betty, you have to call Mom. She's mad at you. She says you abandoned me and she won't take me in either. Please just fix this, Finn. Fix it? As if I hadn't been fixing her life for years? I ignored the message, but curiosity got the better of me and I called Mom later that evening. To my surprise, Mom was calm, not angry, as Betty had claimed. I don't know why she's telling you this, Mom said. She's just embarrassed. Frankly, I'm not thrilled to have her here, but maybe that's what she needs. She's been spoiled for too long. Hearing this shocked me. Mom had never taken much responsibility for us after the divorce, but even she seemed to see through Betty's act. What came next was something I didn't see coming. Mom added, "Oh, by the way, did you know that Betty was keeping secrets from you? I found one of her credit card statements while she was packing. She's been spending money like crazy, way more than you probably realized. I don't think she was ever as broke as she made it out to be." That made my blood boil all over again. Not only had she lied to me about her finances, but she'd been living the high life while crying poor to me. I thanked Mom for telling me, hung up, and promised myself once again that I was done. But something in the pit of my stomach told me it wasn't over yet. It wasn't long after Mom's revelation that Betty's latest scheme came to light. She couldn't manipulate me anymore, and Mom wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for her, so she started reaching out to other family members. It started with a text from Aunt Carla, who lived out of state and wasn't particularly close to either of us. Aunt Carla: "Hi, Finn. I just wanted to check in on Betty. She called me earlier asking for money to help with unexpected bills. Is she okay?" I stared at my phone, stunned. Betty hadn't said a word about this, and I knew for a fact that there were no unexpected bills, just the consequences of her own choices. I called Carla and explained everything, from Betty's eviction to the years of financial support I'd provided. Carla was shocked. "She made it sound like you were the one who left her high and dry," she said. "I was willing to send her $1,000. I'm so glad I checked with you first." Carla wasn't the only one. Over the next week, I heard from 2 cousins and even Dad, all of whom had been approached by Betty with the same sob story. She spun this tale that I had cruelly abandoned her after years of being her only lifeline. The audacity was almost awe-inspiring. But what really got my goat was when she tried to involve my coworkers. I walked into the office one morning and found a note on my desk. It was from Sarah, one of the administrative assistants. "Hey, Finn, a woman named Betty called here yesterday asking for you. She said it was urgent, and she needed help. I didn't give her any information, but I thought you should know." I felt my blood pressure rise. Betty had crossed every line imaginable, but to drag my professional life into her mess? This was a new low. I called her that night, my anger barely contained. She answered the first ring. "Finn! Oh my God, I'm so glad you called." I cut her off. "What the hell do you think you're doing, calling my office?" There was a pause. "I was just trying to get in touch with you. You weren't answering my texts? So you thought it was appropriate to bring my work into it? Are you out of your mind?" I didn't mean anything by it, she said quickly. I just didn't know what else to do. You're my brother, Finn. I'm desperate. You're not desperate, I snapped. You're manipulative. You've lied to everyone, Mom and Carla, our cousins, spinning this story about how I abandoned you, when the truth is you've been using me for years. You've burned every bridge and now you're trying to ruin my reputation at work? I've had enough, Betty. Don't contact me again. She started to cry, of course, but I hung up before she could say another word. A few days later, I got another message from Linda, this time with more screenshots. Betty had been complaining about me in another group chat, calling me heartless and saying she'd find a way to make him pay. One of her friends even suggested that she report me to HR at work for abandoning family responsibilities. That was it. I sent her one last message, making my position crystal clear. Betty, this is the last time I'm going to say this. Stop contacting me, stop lying about me, and stop dragging me into your mess. If you continue, I will hire a lawyer and we can handle this legally. I have proof of everything you've said and done, and if it goes that far, it's not going to end well for you. I don't want to do this, but I will if you leave me no choice. Consider this your last warning. I knew she wouldn't take it well, and for a while I braced myself for the consequences. But surprisingly, she went silent. No texts, no calls, no uninvited attempts to interfere in my life. It was almost eerie how quickly she disappeared from my world. We didn't speak for 3 years. Not a word. No holidays, no birthdays, nothing. At first, it felt like a relief, a weight lifted off my shoulders. But over time, the silence began to feel strange. Betty wasn't just some random person, she was my sister, someone I'd grown up with, someone I'd once trusted enough to support without question. Still, I wasn't about to reach out. Then one day, fate had other plans. I had a business trip that took me to a small town a few hours away. It was one of those quick visits where I didn't expect to see much beyond the inside of a conference room. But as I walked through downtown looking for a coffee shop before my meeting, I heard someone call my name. Finn? I turned and there she was, Betty. At first I didn't even recognize her. She looked so different. More polished, more mature. Her hair was neatly styled, her clothes professional but casual, and there was something about her expression that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Betty, I said, completely surprised. What are you doing here? She smiled nervously. I live here now. I work nearby. What about you? I explained that I was in town for work, and before I could say anything else, she came over and said, It's been a long time, huh? I nodded. Yeah. 3 years, I think. There was a pause, and then she said, Listen, Finn, I know this is probably the last thing you expected, but I just want to say I'm sorry. For everything. I was a mess back then. I didn't appreciate what you did for me and I took advantage of your kindness. You didn't deserve it, and I've regretted it ever since. Her words took me by surprise. For the first time, it didn't feel like an act or a guilt trip. It felt real. I've learned a lot over the years, she continued. And frankly, you were right to cut me off. It forced me to grow up, to figure out how to stand on my own 2 feet. I have a good job now, I'm in a healthy relationship, and I'm finally in a good place. I just wanted you to know that. I didn't know what to say. Part of me had been preparing for a moment like this, but the sincerity in her voice disarmed me. I'm glad to hear that, Betty, I finally said. It's good to see you doing well. She smiled, and then, to my surprise, she asked, Do you think we could start over? I know I have a lot to make up for, but you're my brother. I'd like us to get back together if you're open to it. I hesitated, but something in her tone told me she meant it. We'll see, I said. Before we parted ways, she invited me to dinner the following week. I told her I'd think about it, and as I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what the catch was. A week later, I found myself sitting in a small, cozy restaurant in Betty's town. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Part of me was still cautious, But another part of me, the part that remembered the good times we'd shared before everything went wrong, hoped that this dinner might be a turning point. When Betty walked in, she looked nervous but determined. She hugged me as soon as she reached the table, and for a moment it felt like we were just siblings again, with no tension or baggage between us. Dinner started out light. We caught up on the basics: her job, her boyfriend, my work. She told me that she worked as a project manager for a local company, and that she'd worked her way up from an entry-level position. It was clear that she was proud of herself, and with good reason. As the night wore on, Betty became quieter. Finally, she looked at me and said, "I owe you more than an apology, Finn. You didn't just keep me afloat back then, you gave me a chance I didn't deserve. I was selfish, immature, and frankly, a terrible sister. But if you hadn't cut me off, I don't think I would have ever grown up. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to show you how much I've changed." I didn't know how to respond. Hearing her say that meant more than I expected. Before I could speak, she pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it," she said. I opened the envelope and my jaw almost hit the table. Inside was $20,000 in cash. "Betty, what is this?" "It's for you," she said. "I've been saving for the last few years. I know it's not nearly enough to repay you for all you've done for me, but it's a start. I want you to have it, Finn. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you, and this is my way of saying thank you." I stared at the money, speechless. I never thought I'd see the day when Betty would do something like this. "I can't take this," I finally said. "Yes, you can," she insisted. "It's not about the money, it's about making things right. Please, Finn. Let me do this." After a long pause, I nodded. "All right. Thank you, Betty. That means a lot." For the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. The bitterness and resentment I had carried for so long began to fade, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years: hope. We finished dinner, and before we left, Betty hugged me again and said, "I know we can't go back to the way things were, but I hope we can move forward." I smiled. "So do I." Since that night, Betty and I have stayed in touch. We're not just siblings again, we're friends. And though it took years of pain and distance to get here, I think we are both better for it. Sometimes happy endings don't look like you imagined, but they're still worth the wait.